Greetings and welcome to another episode of The Common Passenger, where we talk all things international. Name's Tono. As usual, I'm being looked after by Betka. My, what a special guest we have today. The gentleman on the other end of the phone line is a real traveler, in all meanings of that word. After visiting a dozen countries all around the globe, he was kind enough to tell us some stories from his internship days. Ladies and gents, Christian Pyerin has joined us today. Servus, Christian.
Hello. Hi, nice to be here.
Do you remember Jakub, the president of our local committee, the guest on our first episode? He was the one to get us in contact with you. EST community is truly extensive. Enough for the introduction, let's get straight into the first question. What was the reason for choosing Kazakhstan as your internship destination?
I always wanted to work in rather, let's say, the global south or outside of Europe or outside of the US, like into more rural countries. And Kazakhstan was just the first opportunity that I had with IIST. So I took it.
What were the first days there like? What surprised you the most?
Well, to start off, actually, as I decided to do that internship in Kazakhstan, I thought, well, I'm not in Central Asia every day, so I took a 2 weeks trip to Kyrgyzstan first, as it's close by, or at least relatively close by, and I would say these two countries, at least for me, are quite similar, and I was very pleased by the hospitality there, and life was kind of really chill, and it was just very pleasant to be there, and I felt very welcomed.
How long did it take you to get used to living there?
Actually, immediately, because it was really uncomplicated, everything. People were very supportive. Also, what helped a lot probably was that there was another intern there with me, and so we would manage the small challenges together, which was very pleasant.
What was your job there? Was it difficult?
No, not at all. On the one hand, in the beginning, I was a bit disappointed because I didn't really have a job, like not a real task, because my supervisor didn't know that I was coming. But it turned out to be very good because I had much more time to, meet other students, join them, and so on. But basically, my job there, my internship there, was that I was in the ecology lab of the technical university there, and my supervisor just showed me the facilities and made me do some small experiments, like more for fun, not for their benefit, but I did learn about making chemical analyses about hair, like to find heavy metal pollutants in hair. Or I also saw something about microcloning potatoes, which I've never heard of before. Or, I've been to some mechanical engineering labs where they made some experiments that I could look at and that kind of stuff. But it was more like learning than really working, actually.
Quite interesting. Was the language barrier between you and native people there a big problem?
Well, in the end, not. But actually, there is quite a barrier because not many people actually speak English or German, which is also one of the languages from the World War times that's left over. But so, I did bring along a Russian language book. Russian is one of the two languages spoken there. The other one is Kazakh, but in the northeast where I was, Russian was more frequently used actually. And even reading Russian is not that easy, to be honest. So that was already a challenge, and not to speak about understanding it. And so, actually, most of the time I was hanging out with English speaking people, like either like people from the student dormitories who spoke a little bit of English, or actually mainly I was hanging out with people from the so-called American Corner. It's like from the US Embassy, a place where people study English, but in a very chill way. And you can just meet people who like to practice English, and it was always cool to spend time with them. Well, during the week or any time outside of the American Corner as well. So the language barrier wasn't that big after all.
Did you still manage to make friends amongst the people who are native Kazakh?
Yes, definitely. Well, I only met this town where I was, that was Ust-Kamenogorsk in Russian, or Özkemen in Kazakh. Actually, there are not too many foreigners there, so most of the people that I met were locals or natives. And apart from three foreigners that I was spending time with, all the others were local people. And I spent, as I didn't work that much, also my working days were often just 4 or 5 hours. I had a lot of time to spend with local friends.
Great. What places did you visit there, except for the city that you resided in?
Well, as Kazakhstan is actually very widespread, it's not that easy to get to other larger towns. Like, for example, the capital is 20 or 25 hours by bus away, and also Almaty, the former capital, is like 20, 25 hours away. So most of my activities outside of town were in the nature, at sites of cultural heritage, like, for example, old caves where the Mongols were, and where they made some cave drawings, or, for example, a huge national park with lakes and nature and hills. Like, it's really very beautiful, actually. Land there is so widespread and with so little, well, civilization, because why would you put many, many, many houses into one spot if you have so much area? Yeah, I think nature was the main place where I spent time, and I couldn't name it by one place because it's a general, like, you can go anywhere there and it's beautiful actually.
Interesting. Would you say it is worth to go to Kazakhstan to check out nature?
Yes, definitely. It's very different to the nature here. It's mainly steppe actually, which is maybe not the most interesting part, but as I said, there are many mountains and lakes, and they're all untouched. And I would definitely love to go to Kazakhstan again. And apart from going to the same place again to visit friends, I would love to travel all around Kazakhstan, and actually all around Central Asia, as it has a lot to offer actually. And it's really beautiful, and especially with really beautiful people that are super kind.
With my scarce knowledge of Kazakh geography, isn't northeast the place where the Baikonur launch site is located? Did you happen to be around there?
It's in that region, but still it was, of course, as everything in Kazakhstan, like many, many hours away. So I wasn't there. But it's something that sometimes people talk about, but I don't really know anything about it, unfortunately.
Oh, what a shame. More about Kazakh cuisine. What did you like the most there, and how would you describe their cuisine?
one of my favorite dishes are actually like that kind of Kazakh dumplings. Like they remind of, well, I think they're called pierogi, like similar. I mean, I'm not sure about the name now because every country calls it differently, but we have that kind of dumplings in many countries. But there, I don't know. I think they taste really good there. And then, well, it's very Russian influenced actually, the cuisine, especially in the northeast where I was. And so dishes like borщ, like well, a soup, for example, is very frequently eaten there. Or also rather from the south influenced would be horse meat or horse milk, which is very interesting. I ate it once. It doesn't belong to my favorite dishes, but it's definitely worth trying. Actually, like it was 3 years ago now, so I can't really remember much other food stuff. But like for the dumplings, for example, once we made it together with a group of friends at home, and it's so much fun to make them, especially if you get all the hints, tips and tricks from the local people how they do it.
Can you get into a bit more detail about horse milk? That's quite unusual.
Yes, that's true. And actually, it's so unusual that they actually don't. We were once at the American corner when we tried it, a foreign friend of mine and me, and they actually wanted us to try it in front of everyone, and they wanted to see our reaction because they knew that we foreigners don't usually drink horse milk, and it was so extremely disgusting. It was horrible. It was so sour, and well, I actually don't really know how to describe it. You need to try it yourself. But like we were pulling our faces, and they were all laughing so much about our reactions. It was hilarious. But it's interesting to taste. It's definitely worth it once if you like it, you can drink it again, of course.
They were just figuring out if you were worthy of being Kazakh.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
probably didn't succeed.
But they had a good laugh.
That's all that matters. About Kazakh prices, is this an expensive country?
No, not at all. Yeah, well, it's not. Things are very cheap. I mean, on the other hand, if you go to the bigger cities, like the capital Astana, or I think now it's called Nur Sultan, they renamed it after the old president. Like in the capital there and in the former capital Almaty, things are expensive, or at least more expensive. But in the rural areas, they're not at all. I don't know if you know anything about the capital, Astana or Nur Sultan, but it's actually a very, very modern city. Like they had an expo a while ago, a few years back, and it looks like they kind of rebuilt the whole city. Like I was there because my flight back to Europe departed from there, and they have these huge structures full of glass, looking like pyramids or like just crazy structures like you would know from the movie The Hunger Games, for example. It looks like that city looks like that, and it's completely different, therefore, to the city where I was, which reminds of an old communist city. Like it could be a city that's, for example, in Poland, while Astana looks like the Hunger Games.
Interesting. I knew that the capital was quite advanced. Would you consider the difference between big city, a small city there, and a village to be drastic? How do people live in the villages?
Well, there's a big difference between the biggest cities and everything else because somehow the smaller cities and the villagers, at least what I saw, kind of, at least for the way of living, are kind of similar. because people still, even in the cities, do a lot by themselves. So, for example, they cook in the yard outside over a fire if they want, like if they are making a traditional dish or something. Well, yeah, they do a lot of outdoor stuff, and in the villages, yeah, it's. I mean, on the other hand, there are also these super small villages, like really far away from civilization, and I guess that's completely different because sometimes actually you see when you travel by train for 20 hours, you pass like maybe 10 cities, and in between sometimes they have these train posts which are like every 2 3 hours by train away from each other, and it's just one house with a farm around in the middle of nowhere in the steppe, where it's super windy, by the way, always. And the people living there, actually, they're totally cut off from civilization. So they have their own horses mainly, and they don't really have electricity or anything, as it's so far. I mean, they don't have electricity. They have to supply themselves with their own water. And yeah, well, life has to be pretty lonely there. But apart from that, it's like the life is easy.
Very interesting how the capital moved on, but the people in the rural areas still live the way their ancestors used to.
Yeah.
You know, there's a popular film called Borat that's quite controversial amongst Kazakh people, from what I know. Would you say that people there had stereotypes about the way foreigners think about them?
I mean, the movie Borat, actually, quite some people asked me about what I think about the movie, and and if that's how Europeans think about Kazakhstan. And I mean, they didn't quite understand why Borat was supposed to play in Kazakhstan. And of course, like I never thought that Kazakhstan would be like that. And they always feel, I mean, on the one hand they feel relieved when I said that we don't think that Kazakhstan is like that, and on the other hand they anyway knew that we wouldn't be thinking of Kazakhstan like that. They find it pretty ridiculous, the movie.
The reality of Kazakhstan was completely different then.
Yeah, of course.
Looking back at your life there, do you think about it differently than during the time that you actually were experiencing it? Did it change your life in a significant way?
I actually think I've been always traveling a lot before, so it didn't mean, I think it didn't mean any change to my life, to be honest. And when I was there, I really enjoyed my time and felt so welcome and everything that, I mean, now, 3 years later, I still see things the same way, and I'm still very happy about the way that I spent my time there and the people that I met. Well, one thing for sure, when I was there, I was thinking that because of all the cool friends and nice friends that I met there, I was thinking that I would return kind of soon to visit them and to spend more time in Kazakhstan. But after all, it is actually quite far away. So I didn't do it. And at the moment, now, maybe also especially because of COVID, Kazakhstan feels so far away, and it doesn't feel like I'm going to return that soon. Or it doesn't feel as close as it did when I was there 3 years ago, which is a bit sad.
In Kazakhstan, was there a moment or a story that you would tell somebody but not your parents? Something you just don't feel like, yeah, my mom probably does not need to know that.
I mean, I'm pretty honest with my parents, but still there are some, like there's one thing that I'm not proud of, but I was pretty, well, pissed at that time. That was the student dormitory there. It was fine and everything, but in Kazakhstan students go to university with 16 or 17, already sometimes. And so the student dormitories have a different function than here in Europe. So they have the function to take care of your children actually that you sent there. So things like the one thing that disturbed me the most there was the 10 p.m. curfew that was valid for all the people living there. And so I had to be back in the room every night at 10 p.m. And I wasn't happy about it at all. And often I just ignored it. But that made a lot of trouble. And it, of course, stressed the people working there as well. And well, they also spoke with my supervisor at university. But he was actually on my side saying that, well, as an intern, I shouldn't be considered as a student there. And they shouldn't apply the rules. And it was really for the 1 month that I was there. On the one hand, they got used to me coming back late frequently, and but it did stress them out, and I'm not very happy that in the end I made them be stressed out. I mean, if you're in the situation of there, then of course you see things differently, and you're more thinking about yourself and that you want to stay out after 10. Like once I slept at a friend's place and came back at 7 a.m. in the morning, and they were so worried, like, and shocked that I wasn't at home, and were really worried about something that happened to me and could have done it differently maybe. But well, now I'm older and I'm more mature maybe. I would do things different.
I mean, what are they gonna do? Call your parents?
No, but maybe kick me out.
Would you say that dorms there, except for the curfew part, are different from the ones we found in Europe?
Well, yes, of course. Like as many things, like they're not as modern, and also just like it would be just one room usually, and in that room, these 2 to 4 people who live in that room would also cook because they don't have their own kitchen to cook in, so they would have their kitchen stove in the room. But because of that curfew and everything, people would spend their evenings together, and people would, like, let's say 5 to 10 people would maybe meet in one room and cook together, play card games and that kind of stuff. So it's very sociable actually, in my opinion, more than in Europe actually.
Was this the only internship you took part in?
No, before that, no, sorry. After that, I was in Nigeria with Jakub that you mentioned before. But he already talked about that internship in Nigeria. We were together in Benin City in his first university that he was in Nigeria. And apart from that, I have been several years ago in Berlin once at a research institute without IIST though, and once in Bangladesh last year.
Would you say that traveling and going on to internships helped you in your career? I know that you're studying, but maybe in your studies?
Yes, definitely. Actually, in general, as I want to work in other countries in the global south, on water projects, the main criteria is often actually that you have experience working overseas and in that kind of situations, areas. And so, actually, my first internship overseas in Berlin helped me, I would say, to get like an internship in Kazakhstan, which is not really the global south, as it's pretty developed still. Then after that, I got an internship in Nigeria, which I guess was also because I had an internship in Kazakhstan before, which was outside of Europe. And then after Nigeria, I got an internship in Bangladesh for an NGO there. I guess because they saw that I have been working in Nigeria before, and it goes on and on and on. And now recently, I got a scholarship for an Erasmus Mundus Master. And of course, like, not just my education plays a role, or my what I do in my part time, like voluntarily, but also my internships in various countries. That all plays a role, and it will continue like that, I guess.
What are your plans for the future?
Well, after my master's in groundwater and global change, I want to work in either humanitarian aid or development cooperation in the water area. So, would be working on water projects like, for example, to supply drinking water or manage sanitation or hygiene stuff, maybe in combination with health, as I've actually often worked in the health area and I really enjoyed, but not as it is. And as my main interest is water, actually, because water is life, and you can there's water scarcity all over the world. Maybe I would like to return to Bangladesh again for some water projects, or maybe to refugee camps around the world, maybe South America, as I really love that area. But yeah, all with water projects.
Thank you for the answers. That is all I wanted our dear listeners to know.
Perfect. Good to hear. I was happy to share with you.
That's it for this episode. My name is Tono, and together with Betka, we will see you in the next one. Stay safe.
Bye.